Octavia Goredema is the CEO and founder of Fire Memos, a software company dedicated to igniting careers. The platform empowers employees to record and recognize their work and accomplishments with AI-powered career coaching. She's also an acclaimed career expert. She's the author of Prep, Push, Pivot, Essential Career Strategies for Underrepresented Women, the host of the Audible original series, How to Change Careers, and has been featured on CNN, Harvard Business Review, and Fortune. Today, we're seeing stars on Startup Different. This is the Startup Different podcast, hosted by successful entrepreneurs and brothers, Dave and Chris Sinkinson. We're here to bust startup myths and give you the insights you need to help you reach your startup dreams. Hello, folks, and welcome to Startup Different. I am David. He is Christopher, and today we have another special guest. It is Octavia. Octavia, welcome to the show. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, we are delighted to have someone as accomplished as you. We just did obviously our introduction, which kind of went through all the amazing things you've done. An author, you've been on like CNN and HBR. You have your own company. Like, you are busy.
Well, thank you. But I think we're always constantly striving for the next, right?
Yeah, looking for the next mountain to climb, I suppose. So
yes, the next challenge, the next problem to solve.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's probably what most of our listeners are doing here today too, right? They've got something they're trying to deal with, and they're trying to find strategies to figure stuff out. So what I want to do today is just obviously get to know you a little bit more, hear a bit more about your journey, and then dig into Fire Memos and how that's going. But let's just start with your career up to date. Give us the highlight reel of Octavia.
Oh my goodness. Okay, where do I start? So right now, I'm the founder of a SaaS startup, but as you can probably hear from my voice, I'm from England. I'm talking to you, though, from Los Angeles.
Cool.
And I'm now a dual US UK citizen. But I started my career after I graduated with a degree in politics and history. And I moved to London and started working actually in public affairs and lobbying, but really thought I was going to pursue a career, probably always in communications, but in that realm. And quickly realized that if I didn't really set my intentions, I could be pulled in directions that maybe didn't align with me. So that was maybe the first indicator of the path that I've gone on to take. But after working in London for a number of years and moving up the career ladder, I moved to Los Angeles. I did that, oh my gosh, a long time ago, 2005. And I came here to lead the public relations for Xbox Live at an agency called Edelman. Yeah, really, really cool.
But, hang on, I'm a closet gamer. Don't put this on the podcast.
But I seriously thought that I would be in LA, I don't know, a year, maybe 2 years. Well, yeah. This is home now. But yes, I moved to the United States, and that really was a turning point for me in so many ways, not just in what I was doing in that moment, but just in terms of me really being stretched in ways I hadn't been stretched before. I moved here with 2 suitcases. I had to start over. You have no credit history. I had to redo my driving test. I was driving on the wrong side of the road.
Oh, that would have been so tough. Where was I? I was on vacation somewhere, and it was on the wrong side of the road, and I was like, this is awful. I think I was in Barbados, and I was just like,
Barbados is beautiful. Barbados is beautiful. But yes, it was just like getting acclimated. And I actually thought the language would be the one thing that would be the easiest. It wasn't. I couldn't understand what people were saying to me. And back then, it was before we had, of course, Zoom and WebEx or Teams. And so everything was, conference calls on your phone. And I literally could not discern. And there would be like 20 people on these calls, and I couldn't understand what was being said. And so even though on paper it looked like, this fantastic move, but I actually was really stretched in so many ways that I hadn't seen coming. And I see that as a thread, actually, multiple things that I've done since, that I tend to have this tendency, I don't realize I'm doing it intentionally, but to try new things and put myself in spaces that are unfamiliar and to start building and having an impact. And so I was working, at a large global corporation, and I would never have imagined at that point that I would abandon that career, pursue my childhood dream of becoming an author, but also crucially become a career coach. And it was my work as a coach that actually led to the work that I do now at Fire Memos. And so, yes, it's been a journey with so many pivots, so many learnings. But I think the common thread in all the things that I've done, whether it was working in communications or becoming an author, is that communication is something that's really important to me. And also solving problems is something that's really important to me. And also enabling other people to do their best work is something that's really important to me. And so those have been threads that have run throughout all of the things that I've done since I started my career.
Hey, one thing that Chris and I have talked a lot about on this show is how easy it is for founders to build apps and automations with no-code tools. One of the most powerful tools out there is called Bubble. But even though Bubble is a no-code platform, it can get a little complicated to do things on your own. And so our sponsor today is an agency that's called Zero Code. That's ZeroQode, which is a top Bubble agency and that can help you build any web, mobile, or AI application, as well as automate your entire business using no-code and AI tools. Zero Code will help you build custom solutions, CRMs, custom dashboards, marketplaces, or internal tools to automate your business much faster and cheaper. However, if you want to try to build on Bubble yourself, Zero Code is also the biggest plugin builder for Bubble, and they have more than 700 plugins. Make sure you check them out. Discover the simplicity and power of no code and AI at zerocode.com. That's Zero Code and code with a Q. And now back to the show.
So cool. I love it. I'm interested naturally because we're authors as well. Our book came out relatively recently. So obviously there we go. Boom. That's so exciting. I love it. And I hope you're enjoying it too.
I've read it and it's amazing.
You're not just saying that because you're on the show, right?
I'm not just saying it because it's on the show. It happened to arrive when I had a clear day, and I'm the sort of reader that when I read something, I just read it. I go all the way through. I don't really dip in and dip out because otherwise I'll never finish it. And it was not only just so easy to read, but it was just, I learned so much. That's why I took so many notes. I folded the pages, and then I also had a notebook and was taking notes as well. So thank you so much for sharing everything that you've shared, and I hope you'll write more.
Oh, thank you. I will see. Honestly, it's been a process to get this one at the door, but what do you think, Chris?
I think the sequel should be called Startup the Same.
What we got wrong in the first one? Yeah,
just do it the way you think.
Yeah.
No, of course not. That's funny.
But I just want to spend a minute though on your book. Prep, Push, Pivot: Essential Career Strategies for Underrepresented Women. Obviously, super interesting. So it was, and I'm just hearing the conviction and the passion in your voice about all this stuff. So what made you go to book though as an option? Why that?
Oh my gosh!
Why not a big blog post? Why not a YouTube channel? What was it? Why was it book?
There were two things. First of all, I had always wanted to be an author, and I'm talking about from when I was tiny. Although when I was tiny, I assumed I'd be writing amazing fiction, right? That's why, and that's why I really value the storytelling that you have in your book, because I just think that's such a gift to be able to actually share stories and but you're also guiding people as you're doing so. And
you're gonna make me blush.
Insights.
This is so complimentary. I can't believe it.
I love the storytelling in it. And so I always wanted to be an author, but I gave up on that dream in multiple ways. I just started to assume that, it's so hard. I would never do it. I couldn't do it. And I think the tipping point for me was I was a coach, and, I've coached at incredible places. I've coached at the World Bank. I've coached at Google. I've coached at Chanel. I've coached at Mattel. But I recognized that the majority of people that need the support might not have access to coaching. Coaching is expensive.
Yeah.
It's really expensive. So either you have to have an organization that has identified you as someone that is worth making that investment in, or is already just committed to doing that, or you have to be able to tap into your own disposable income to be able to afford that. And so I wanted to be able to guide underrepresented women in the workplace on not just my journey, but the questions that I was answering for people who were being coached. And then, as I mentioned, I'd always wanted to be an author, and I was asked to be featured in this exhibition at the University of Oxford called Women Who Dared. And so I was like, well, if I'm going to go to the exhibition, which I want to see, I want to do more while I'm there because I live in Los Angeles. And so I kept asking them, like, do you have anything else happening? Do you need a speaker? Do you need someone to do something? And they kind of, I think, got tired of me asking all these questions. I was like, yeah, sure, Octavia, you can come and do these things. So I spent the week there, and the exhibition was recognizing women who have done, what they perceive to be important things in different spheres, and they'd chosen me to be in that exhibition. And I looked at this exhibition, and it was taking place in this beautiful library at the University of Oxford, the Bodleian Library, and it's hundreds of years old, and I'm surrounded by all of these books. And I was thinking, how can I be in an exhibition called Women Who Dared when I'm not daring to do the one thing I always really wanted to do? And I'm here in a library, right? If this isn't a sign, this is a sign. And so on my flight home, I just made the decision that I was going to do this, and I was just going to keep going and not give up. And I didn't know how long it would take me. I didn't know whether it would work. And the route that I took was having to, first of all, write the book proposal, and then get a literary agent, and then get a book deal, which my publisher's Wiley. I had no idea how that sequence of things would pan out. But yeah, that's what set that in motion.
That's awesome. That's I love it. Determination, eh? You can just I love hearing, even just hearing, first off, your accent's lovely, but also just like the intensity with which you're talking about these things and the determination, like that, like I don't want to use grit because grit sometimes is misused as like, in different circumstances, but you are certainly incredibly determined. I
think the word is courage.
Courage.
And I think a lot of entrepreneurs have courage, and that's what I feel like is
you're feeling that too.
Yeah. Right.
So let's shift gears. So loving the book. That's great. And we'll post some links for it, folks, if you want to check it out on this video. We'll put it in the comments. But for Fire Memos, yes. Let's talk about that. How is that going? Maybe give people a quick rundown of the actual, like, what it is.
Yes.
And let's talk. Let's go there.
So Fire Memos is a web-based platform that enables employees to record and remember their achievements at work and get AI-powered coaching along the way. We are currently in private beta right now while we're speaking. I came up with the idea a year ago, started to assemble the team that would work on it. We were then accepted into Techstars in the spring. We built out our MVP while we were in that program, and we literally completed the private beta, 2 months ago, and started inviting organizations to test that out. So we are right at the beginning. We're 9 months old since incorporation, but it has been and will continue to be the best experience of my life. I am learning so much. One of the key differences, and you might get to this point with your book, when your book is done, it's done, right? Mm-hmm. You can't go back and change anything, right? You can't go and add additional things to it. You can't hear feedback and then iterate. And so having something that is living and breathing and is constantly being molded and shaped and growing is just so extraordinary. It also means for someone like me, who I realize gets bored very fast, there is not time to get bored, because every hour presents something that needs to get done or needs to be figured out or needs to be thought through or needs to be maybe put on the back burner for a while you're dealing with something else that's more pressing. So it's been such a learning curve for me, and also to have had the opportunity to go through an accelerator while we were building was just so powerful. And so I feel like the past few months have just been extraordinary in terms of me being stretched and learning and growing.
I share that feeling of there was nothing that got me more excited about our business. Obviously, I was the main software developer for our company, and hearing a customer explain a problem and being able to go back to my development environment and write some code and fix that, and within a day just knock their socks off, put it in front of them and say, hey, that was a great idea you had yesterday. We went ahead and put it into the software. We'd like you to try it out and see what you think. Dave is looking at me with like eyes, like, laser eyes right now, because it would drive him nuts because I would get distracted with some of these little side projects. But I totally share that feeling with you, that it is the greatest feeling ever to be able to change something in real time and make a customer happy.
Yes, and I love that ability to do that. And I feel like and one of the reasons that I wanted to create Fire Memos was that I feel there's so much invisible work that people do that we underestimate. And we often also forget the impact of what we tried didn't work, or the things that are in between. And so at its core, Fire Memos is about helping people, especially early career and mid-career professionals who might not have the best manager, or might be feeling like they're not making the progress that they should be, to actually really have a place where they can self-validate that and realize that. And for me to also be going through this process as a founder and growing and evolving, it feels really special.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I just want to go back to Chris's comment for a second, because it is fun to take on those projects. But I found when we got to a certain point, it almost becomes a little bit dangerous, right? Because I think one of the most important things, and you're a very determined individual, no doubt. But one of the things that becomes challenging is that you're going to see a lot of things that you could possibly solve. Right? There's a lot of problems that you can attack, a lot of things that are meaningful too, that'll actually mean something to someone else. But you only have so much time, and being able
or so much resources.
Exactly. Right. You only have your developers, they got to sleep too, unfortunately. So, with that in mind, it's kind of like how prioritizing that, or even what I frankly ended up doing a lot of the time is I call it running interference, but frankly, it's more of like an evaluation process for these ideas that we would get from customers or from third parties or whatever. But that's very important to have. But I think your stage right now with the business is really fun because, it's like, okay, we can, the only risk is taking on a little bit too much. But other than that, it's like, hey, we are problem solving and we are iterating and we are improving every day. Especially now that you're, this beta is like opening up a bit more, like you're getting feedback from, I guess, have you invited these organizations or?
Yes, we've invited organizations in, and oh my goodness, you're suddenly realizing this product that we've been so close to, right? Sure. That all of a sudden it's like, why didn't we think of that? Or, but wait, that doesn't make sense to someone else. It makes perfect sense to us. And so it's really illuminating. And yes, you did talk in your book about where you find that line between how much you can do and how much you can't. And, I also, I drive my team crazy because I'm like, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this, I want to do that. Yeah. Can't do it all right now. And also I need to be really careful about the assumptions that we're making based on feedback as well, because it's not necessarily going to play out the way that the person suggesting it thinks it might.
That's always the saddest thing when you get a piece of feedback from a customer and you try to build the thing and then it ends up kind of not quite getting there, and then your team is like, wait, what are we doing? You know what I mean? Like we had a couple of those. I feel like
it's getting weird.
Well, I mean, in the chart, I know exactly what chart you're talking about because it's one of my favorite charts in the book. But it's really valuable feedback, and then over time it sort of decreases, and then it starts to get the feedback is more nuanced and specific to them, and basically less valuable, broadly speaking. And you have to find a way to maintain that relationship with the customer without, but while also being like, hey, we need to stop getting feedback from you, or we're not going to action it as frequently.
That is one of the toughest things, is when you've got your early adopters who you've been very consistent at building and making them happy and coming up with these ideas. And like Dave said, the longer it goes on, the more obscure the requests will get. And the trouble is you really conditioned those early adopters that you're going to do those things that they come up with. So it's really hard to break that chain. And I've been stuck in that a few times, as Dave can attest to.
100%.
Thank you so much, because I really appreciated when I was reading. I felt like, because we're right at the beginning, I was kind of getting a glimpse into what our future roadmap could be like. And it's helping me be really thoughtful right now when we're thinking about, when we're going into moderated beta testing, and how much we absorb, how much we filter, how much we maybe pause and think about for a bit longer. So thank you, because that communication piece that I talked about has always been so impactful to me. This is how it plays out when people share what didn't work, not just what did, but what didn't work. That's where the real learning is. That's what can be so helpful. And even though your journey will probably be a little different to mine, there are still some core premises that are super valuable. And it's really helpful to me, coming out the gate, to be able to read and reference and bookmark, the things that I know I need to come back to.
I love it. I'm so glad. That was really, it is funny because we started the book with a bunch of disclaimers, right? With like how our journey is a little bit different than everybody else's and all that kind of stuff. But the idea would be, hopefully you get something from those principles that we kind of put out there. So it's very fulfilling. I'm not going to lie to hear that from someone. Now let's go back to Fire Memos for a second. So there's a big AI component to this as well, right? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So we spent many, many months, and this is an ongoing process still, training a model on how I would coach someone around thinking about reflecting. At the moment in our first version of our product, it's once a month, reflecting on what your biggest wins were, not just why you chose them, but what is it about them? What did you do? What did you learn? What maybe went wrong as you were doing them? What do you want to keep doing? What comes next? And if someone hasn't been coached before, there are not many times when someone's going to go that deep with you in those sorts of questions. Your manager might be like, oh, well done. Okay, what's next? Because it's always about what's that next fire that's got to be put out, right? What have we got to do next? And I firmly believe, and I've seen this in the work that I've done as a coach, when you hold that space to actually pause and really think, you learn so much. You start to connect dots and you see things, and you begin to self-validate your progress before anyone else does. Because often with anything we do, the validation comes way after all the work is done, right? I'm able to talk to you about what resonates with me in Startup Different. You were doing that work years ago and then writing about that work more recently, but still that journey to write a book, no one else could see what you were writing. No one else could see how you were structuring those chapters. No one else could see the decisions you were making about what goes in, what doesn't go in. No one could see how you motivated yourself and you're like, oh, this is really hard. I'm just projecting here with different scenarios, but those are the things. Those are the things, just as that example, that actually are what makes the work valuable, not necessarily the review I then go and give you on Amazon, even though that might be valuable too. But without all of that journey and all of those insights, we wouldn't even get to that point. And so what we're doing in Fire Memos is holding the space for you to have that type of conversation. And what I love about it is, first of all, it's 95% cheaper than what traditional coaching would cost. It's also accessible whenever you're ready. If you want to start that conversation, you can. And if you suddenly are like, oh, actually, I have to go and do this, you can come back to it when you're ready to. You can go back and look over what you've discussed. And what we're starting to see from our first users is like, oh, I am actually feeling really different coming out of these conversations. And I'm having a perspective I didn't have before. And we can be so hard on ourselves. There's so much focus on what we haven't done yet. Or did it hit this, especially, right now I'm in a metrics driven business, right? Numbers are everything, right? At the end of the day. But there is so much nuance also within that. And so if we can't do this for ourselves, and most people, I've realized, unless they innately have that instinct, haven't been guided on how to do this. It's something that they don't do. And then if you're in an environment where it's geared towards performance reviews, you might only have 30 minutes a year to justify what you have done for 12 months and start to talk about what you want to do next. That's huge. And if you have responsibilities for other people, not only are you having to prepare for your own review, you're also having to guide other people through theirs. So often your own performance gets lost in the shuffle because you're sorting out everybody else's needs. It's a really hard mechanism. And then what I'm also seeing from some of our users, because we invited some groups that actually don't have bosses, some founders, and they're like, this is so great. No one ever asked me these questions. My board aren't interested in this level of detail. And I'm able to actually, have a conversation about some things and get some insights that are really helpful for me too. So yes, I am so excited about what the potential could be, but oh my goodness, there is so much work we're doing, right? And so much still to do. But it's an exciting path to be on.
So Octavia, maybe you could tell us, so that's kind of like what you've been doing.
Yes.
What about if you look forward, where do you see this in 6 months, a year, 18 months, 24 months from now? How do you see the next couple of years playing out?
So 6 months from now, I want us to have 3 product tiers. Right now we have an MVP, which has our initial core features that we're testing out, which is how you add your wins and how you do your check-in, which is what we call our coaching. We want to have 3 distinct tiers. We're going to be fully launched because right now we're in a private beta. We have a US focus at the moment, but we want to continue to grow and scale and be in other markets. And personally, we have such a great team. I want to see what our team is doing as well in terms of, their experiences, what we as Fire Memos, how our culture is forming and, what that means. Because right now it's really, okay, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this. But it's really important to me to also in this role to really take care of the people that are building with me. Yeah. So that really excites me. I just made a new Audible series, so that will be coming out next year as well. So I'm excited for that. But yes, I have a roadmap and I just need to hit all of those markers, at least the ones that I can see for the next 6 months. And in all honesty, I don't know beyond that. I think I've got to get into the next 3 months and then I'll be able to track a little bit further. But when I look at where we were 6 months ago, oh my gosh, right? And then where we are now. So I can't wait to see what we're doing 6 months from now and then what new milestones I've put in place to move beyond that.
That's awesome. I feel like we definitely had the same perspective when we were doing our stuff. I remember people would ask us, you're trying to win a new contract or something with a new customer, and they'd be like, "So, what's your plan for the next year?" And we'd be like, "I don't know. We'll see when we get there." like we have a general idea. We want to grow our business. We want to serve our customers well. We want to do all those important things, but it's very difficult we don't have a crystal ball, and the market changes quickly, and there's competitive forces and all that kind of stuff.
We tried not to get too locked into a roadmap. That was, the market changes, customer requirements change, new technologies disrupt. You want to have a rough idea, but you don't want to be too locked into your roadmap where you've got blinders on. So sounds like you're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm learning as I go.
Well, I think most entrepreneurs are, to be honest, and I think that's part of what makes it exciting. So I have 2 more questions for you. And I have to ask about this. This one I'm super curious. I'm looking at my notes here. I did notice this. Also, because we're in Canada, I don't know, I feel like it feels a little bit more relevant. But were you appointed a member of the Order of the British Empire by the Queen in recognition of your work?
Yes.
Okay, go on.
Thank you. Well, first of all, it was a total surprise. But I started an organization that supported Black female founders. And I started that organization because I wanted to connect with other peers that were building and to be inspired, but then also realize that there was an opportunity for us to also connect with school children. When I was growing up, I never had another Black teacher or any other role model that could potentially look like me. And sometimes you have to see it to be it. And so we started doing work. I was back in London for a couple of years when I started this. So we started doing work with schools, which was so rewarding. And I ended up helping the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister with an enterprise campaign. Yes. Yes, but this is the thing.
Yeah.
When you start doing the things that just resonate with you, you're not always attached to what the outcomes might be. And I'm super honored to have received this. And it was so fun to go to Buckingham Palace, and I met
Amazing.
King Charles, who at the time was Prince Charles, and he gave me my investiture, and there's lots of cool things that go with it that I had no idea about. But the core of it was really just wanting to connect, share, and also just to help others unlock their potential. Yeah. And so, our first public demo for Fire Memos was at a conference hosted by Oprah Winfrey's Foundation. In May, Incredible. I met Miss Winfrey. Incredible. That wasn't on my roadmap of things to do when I was mapping out what we would do. No, I didn't at all. Yeah. But when you are doing the work that really resonates with you and you talk to people about what you're doing, often there are suggestions or recommendations that move you further forward in ways that might seem like externally significant. But at its core, it was just about wanting to connect, wanting to solve problems for others and help others do their best work. And so that's how that came about.
That's spectacular. It's how do I say this? I love all the guests that came on that's come on the show before, but you are like genuinely inspiring me right now. Like you have such an interesting story. You're so committed to the things you do. You're so invested in them. I don't know. I think it's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. I genuinely feel it took me a long time to find the things that light me up, though. And I think it's important to also, you've got to, it's not always like that. There's going to be times when you're doing things that don't feel that way. And there's going to be times when you're just trying to figure out what that project or next role could look like for you. And so I found the magic happens generally when I am in that sense of flow.
I love it. I love it. Now, I do have one final question for you because we'd like to ask this of all the guests who come on our show, but we like to talk about startup myths. And obviously you have your startup and you've done all these other amazing things. So what is a startup myth that would be valuable for our listeners to know or to debunk today?
I think a myth that I believed and then was able to disprove for myself was that you can't get into a tech accelerator as a solo founder. And I'm a solo founder. I wouldn't be able to do what I do without the team around me. I'm not working completely on my own, but I am the founder that has equity, and before we secured our first investor, which was Techstars, I seriously thought that I would not make it past what I thought was just going to be one first interview because of this. I genuinely thought that, I've seen other accelerators like Y Combinator where they, it's like
you kind of need
to have
most of the time. That's very surprising, actually. Yeah.
But I just met someone last week at a networking event here. She went through Y Combinator as a solo founder too, right? There you go. And so what I presumed to be a myth is not true. That said, I think it's you have to have a team around you. But what I've also started to see with, I wouldn't be where I am now without the peers that I have around me who are building and a few steps ahead of me, is that the relationships that you have as a team also are so important, whether you're sharing equity or whether you're not. And it takes a lot of work to really harness how you counterbalance, how you have hard conversations, how when you push, pull, and how you work together. And I think it's really important to learn how to have hard conversations as a team.
Totally.
And not to avoid those.
I think that's very true. I think HR issues are the issues and the good things, the good and the bad. That is the toughest part of basically any business, to inspire and motivate. That said, I think you're definitely going to be doing a really good job of it just based on your background and everything else you've been talking about here today. And I think your company is going to do very well. I don't know.
Well, I appreciate that.
It's going to be an interesting ride. We will be following very closely.
Yeah, for sure. Octavia, thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, just wonderful to speak with you. And so interesting. Maybe we'll have you back on again someday because I would love an update in a couple of years when we see, how your company's doing and all that kind of stuff. Maybe you'll you'll meet the president instead of meeting the king. But anyway,
I would love to come back. And yes, one of my goals is an acquisition. So thank you for laying the foundations for how to move closer to that.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. And folks, that's another episode of Startup Different. We will be back next week where we go deep on this interview, and we look forward to seeing you then. Thanks so much. Hey, you made it all the way to the end of the episode. Nicely done. If you enjoyed this episode, like, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so the almighty algorithm can help others find us. Want more from Startup Different? Check out our book, Startup Different, the myth-busting blueprint for your multi-million-dollar business. Follow us on social. We're big on YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can also check us out at startupdifferent.com. Special thanks for this episode to Graham and our friends at Toronto Podcasts. Visit them at torontopodcast.ca. See you next week.